but simply kicking the can down the road and running up more debt is not the answer. We need to get the government back open. We need to get responsible policymakers to the table to resolve these and other pressing issues.
Chairman McCune, we heard from House Speaker Mike Johnson yesterday as he discussed the government shutdown, saying, look, I don't want to be here any more than you want to be here as we head into another week of the shutdown. But he also addressed the No Kings protests that we are obviously taking live this morning. He called it the Hate America rally. Do you think that's what it is? Is that fair to say?
They're fundamentally two different views of America increasingly between the political parties. And I'm sad to say that. Democrats generally view America as the villain in world history. If you talk about our founding, if you talk about our intervention in around the world, they view all these things very negatively. American exceptionalism, American global leadership. Republicans are unashamed in being proud of our country, proud of the role this country has played, not only for the people of our nation, but people all over the world who have benefited from American leadership. And so you have this sort of rewriting of American history, and frankly, in a lot of cases, simply ignorance about our history. I mean, I heard some people earlier saying that their rights were being taken away as they are in the midst of protesting and exercising their First Amendment rights. So it's just, it's very disappointing. And I agree with Speaker Johnson.
Mm-hmm. Well, you speak about Republicans being proud of to say that they are American, but during these demonstrations, we see a lot of people holding American flags, and they say they want America to be what they remember growing up. What would you say to that, to the fact that we are seeing people holding American flags at this demonstration happening right here in Metro Atlanta?
I'd love for them to tell me what they mean by saying they want to live in the America they were living in growing up. You know, we have a country, when this president came in this January, where we had no effective control over our borders and ports of entry. Illegal aliens were not only coming across the border and taking jobs from Americans, they were being exploited. We were seeing human trafficking, terrible things happening because we had no effective control of our borders and ports of entry. President Biden said, oh, we've got to have a law. Well, President Trump came in, took executive action, and border encounters have dropped something like 90%. I mean, that problem was resolved almost overnight by his leadership. You know, we're living in a time right now of economic growth. We don't have American military intervention going on all over the world. You know, the president has worked very hard to bring peace to the Middle East. He's working right now as the Democrats give political speeches at these rallies. He's working to bring peace to Ukraine. This president has done so much for our country, and it's just hard for me to see what people mean when they're saying that their rights are being taken away, because I just don't see that.
Well, you know, we have seen what I think many people would say are wins for the president, including the Gaza peace deal this week, including stock market near record highs, interest rates likely going down soon. But then on the other side of things, you see members of the press kicked out of the Pentagon this week. And you see the U.S. forces stepping up attacks on alleged drug boats in the Caribbean that, by the way, senators on both sides of the aisle are taking issue with. Can you see why some folks would have an issue with the way things are headed right now?
So let me talk about the drug issue first. I know personally, and I bet y'all do too, a family member or a friend who has been personally impacted by fentanyl flooding into this country. President Trump spent the entire campaign talking about how dangerous it was, alongside the immigration issue of illegal drugs flowing into our country and killing our young people, millions of people who have been killed by fentanyl-laced drugs. So I think the president is absolutely right and within his authority to do what it takes when it comes to interdiction to prevent these cartels from poisoning our children. And I think most Americans agree with that. When it comes to press access at the Pentagon and making sure that, you know, national security is paramount, obviously you've got to balance the interest of a free press and the interest of national security. No one kicked the reporters out. The reporters decided they didn't want to go along with new ground rules that the administration was asking for the privilege of being able to report from the Pentagon. You know, reasonable people can disagree about that, but that's not an abridgment of the free press. It's not preventing the press from doing their job. So again, I think there's a lot of overheated rhetoric out there, again, to try to distract from the very real victories this president is achieving every single day. I don't think anyone believed in January that we would have largely resolved the illegal immigration issue and that we would see at least the beginnings of a peace in Israel and Gaza. And this president has done it, and he's done it in less than a year. And those are just the things that people are really paying attention to. The big, beautiful bill, the biggest tax relief for ordinary Americans in my lifetime. I mean, just win after win after win. And unfortunately, the Democrats are so upset. They voted for the very same CR in March that Republicans proposed for this 7-week period while everybody could get around the table and come up with a more global budget deal. The reason they shut the government down is they know they are losing the argument. And they're desperate to try to turn this narrative around and try to blame the president for what's going on. But the American people are sharp, and they can watch every day as Senator Thune puts that clean CR on the table over and over again, and John Ossoff and Raphael Warnock vote against opening the government so they can show up to these rallies and tell lies about President Trump.
What would you say to Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene out of Georgia saying, that the party needs to come and have a discussion about health care? What is the Republican plan for health care?
So look, I think everybody agrees that we need to make sure Americans have access to health care. I lost my mother to pancreatic cancer. I know what it's like to have a loved one need access to health care, a lot of health care, and what it is to try to navigate through that process. I think that we don't make good policy by having an 11th hour agreement to keep the government open. I think the way we make good policy is by having a smart and reasoned conversation about how to do it. And frankly, I don't think there's a one size fits all solution. That was why most Republicans opposed this idea of Obamacare, because what's right for California may not be right for Georgia, may not be right for Rhode Island. Trying to let this get to a more local level would do a lot to solve the problem. And getting the federal government out of it would likely reduce costs for people. So we need to have an honest conversation about it and stop using the issue of health care or holding people's health care hostage in order to score political points.
Can you speak further by what do you mean by not the federal government being involved and more of the state government being involved? Because a lot of these state agencies are bogged down because so many people are trying to get access to health care. Can you kind of walk us through, what do you mean by that?
Sure, you're talking about the exchanges that are made available for people to buy Obamacare. What I'm talking about is when you have thousands of pages of federal laws and regulations governing how some national marketplace is going to work, that is much less efficient than if you simply said to the states, we're going to take the current money that's available and make it available to Georgia and let Georgia do this. I mean, Governor Kemp has been working on this and has gotten a waiver, and we're making progress with Georgia's version, but we really need more autonomy at the state level. So you're right. The exchanges and Obamacare, that process is a convoluted process. It's an attempt to create a one-size-fits-all solution in a country of 350 million people. What we need is to let the states do what they do well, which is to innovate for the populations in their states. The demographics are different. The ages are different of the population. The healthcare issues affecting the populations are different. So let the states do that, or let the states band together and do it. But give people more flexibility to come up with solutions that make sense, that get closer to the people, instead of folks in Washington, D.C. trying to map out a plan that's not ever going to solve for 350 million people.
Mm-hmm. And as we head into midterms, what do you want the messaging to be from the Republican Party so we do have unity and we see less of these demonstrations so us as Americans can all be together and move forward as we head into a pivotal time? We're going to have the governor's race coming up next year. We have the senator's race really heating up over the last few months. What would you like to see that messaging be?
Well, here in Georgia, we just were ranked for the 12th year in a row the best state to do business. And that's not an accident that has come along with united Republican control of Georgia state government. We've kept taxes low and we've cut taxes. We've made it easier to start businesses and grow businesses in Georgia. We've been very friendly to the small business owner, that person that maybe they want to break away from their 9-to-5 job and start their own company. And I think the people of Georgia are going to reward that next year. We need to remind them of what we've accomplished on their behalf over these last 12 years or so. But I'm very bullish on that messaging. On the federal level, it's what we've been talking about this morning, right? It's about unprecedented tax relief for the American people that is, as you mentioned, has resulted in record highs in stock exchanges. But more importantly, it's meant better quality jobs, higher wage jobs. The president has announced hundreds of billions, if not now into the trillions, in direct foreign investment in this country over the last 10 months that are going to create jobs. We've seen over in Pooler, the Hyundai EV plant, they have made expansion announcements. So the message for Republicans needs to be, we've done what we promised. We have grown the economy. We've made it easier for you to find a job. We have dealt with a lot of these very thorny issues around immigration that the president talked about. We're delivering on our promises for the American people. And if you give us 2 more years, we're going to continue to move America forward and continue to make it great again.
If you're just tuning in, this is Georgia GOP Chair Josh McCoon joining us on the day of the No Kings protests. You know, Josh, last time we saw these protests in Atlanta, it was back in mid-June. And since then, we've seen the assassination of a Minnesota lawmaker and her husband. And we saw the assassination of conservative activist Charlie Kirk. The temperature's been raised in this country since June, since the last No Kings protest. I'm just curious your thoughts on where we find ourselves as a country when it comes to political polarization and what responsibility both parties share when it comes to lowering that temperature and keeping the debate constructive.
Yeah, so I think it starts with being frank. And I've certainly tried to do that with y'all this morning about the positions without being engaging in dehumanization of your political opposition. Because when you begin to take away somebody's humanity, that's when somebody thinks, well, it's okay for me to hurt this person or do something worse. I was horrified by the killings in Minnesota, released a statement the very same day. As a former state legislator, it hits very close to me what happened there. I did not know them personally. Charlie Kirk was a friend of mine who I knew quite well. And to see that happen was deeply affecting to me. And again, I think just today at today's protest, I've seen signs with swastikas. I've seen people calling Republicans Nazis and fascists. And I'm not saying it's all one side or the other, but there's a lot of that rhetoric that comes from the left. And that is irresponsible because it inspires people to do terrible things. So if we want to disagree on the issues, let's disagree on the issues. We can disagree passionately, but let's be very, very careful about saying things that we know are not true to try to strip away someone's humanity.
Well, then if we know it to not be true, why are we calling it the Hate America rally? Why are some on the right calling it the Hate America rally? Is that taking it too far?
Look, I think that if you listen to what is being said, it is hard not to describe. It's hard to find the right words to describe what's going on. I think that there is a mindset, and it's a mindset that's inculcated in college and university campuses around this country, that there's something profoundly wrong with America, that America is the villain of world history, that it's not the hero of world history. And that's fine. You're free to have that point of view. This is a free country, but I think we're also free to call that point of view what it is. When you compare somebody in the opposite political party to folks that were responsible for the greatest genocide in world history, that's beyond the pale. That is wildly irresponsible. And it is the sort of thing that inspires the political violence you're asking me about.
Mm-hmm. And we're going to continue to watch and follow these protests as they play out and just hear some of the messaging from some of the people that are participating. But we really appreciate you, Josh, for coming on and speaking to some of the issues that we are hearing from these people on the ground to kind of get a viewpoint from the other side. So we definitely appreciate your perspective today, Josh.
Thank you, Josh.
Thank you for the time.